Thanks, Ceann Comhairle Taoiseach. I think there's a certain tragic irony in the situation that as we sit here this morning, homeowners in Priory Hall are before the courts down the road as Dublin City Council seeks to get out of the responsibility of paying temporary accommodation for families who had the misfortune of purchasing a home in Priory Hall. Families who've lived on the knife edge for hundreds of days now in unsecure accommodation while continuing to pay a mortgage on buildings that are only fit to be knocked down. And isn't it ironic, Taoiseach, that 100 years ago in this city, James Connolly, your former party leader, fought against tenement buildings. Now on your watch, homeowners are being treated like evacuees, paying money for property that are debt traps and a health hazard. Isn't it ironic that James Connolly campaigned against William Martin Murphy and independent newspapers as the mouthpiece of the employers? On your watch, the new William Martin O'Brien and independent news and media get a bailout of $60 million at the taxpayers' expense. A real case of history repeating itself, but this time round, you, who claim to stand in the legacy of Connolly, are on the wrong side of the barricades. And it must have been pretty nauseating to take a lecture from Fianna Fáil about workers' rights and bus workers' rights, but it was even more nauseating to hear your response. You could have been Bus Éireann management. You could have been the way Fianna Fáil were when they were on your side of the House. And I'd like you to explain the journey that you've made onto the side of IBEC. The nation was treated to the views of IBEC earlier in the week when they told us they wanted an end of austerity. It had gone far enough. Sounded good until you looked at the small print. What they were actually talking about was making sure there'd be no austerity for them. By all means, they said, continue with the austerity on hard-pressed homeowners, fleece them for a home tax, go after them for a water tax, and when low and middle income earners had nowhere else to be got out of them, don't make sure by all means go after the high earners. Instead, they argue that you go after public sector workers again, and they were ably assisted in that by your Deputy Minister Howland. I'd really like to ask you, Taoiseach, what planet, or Taoiseach, what planet are you living on? Maybe it's the one where people like David Begg, who's on €140,000, puts forward the prospect for the unions to be realistic. Do you think it is realistic for low-paid public sector workers who've already had their salaries reduced by 22% to have it reduced further? Do you think it's realistic for unions to go into a process where their members will come out worse off? Would it not be more realistic?
Deputy, you're over time, please.
Millionaires who've got richer on your watch by progressively taxing them as you said they would, and wouldn't that be something that a party that says it's going to represent workers would actually do?
I get the impression that Deputy Daly doesn't think very highly of me.
No, you either, Timmy.
First of all, I think the specific question was, do I support low-paid workers taking a further cut? No, I don't. And that is why the agreement that was proposed to the trade unions did not propose a cut in pay for low-paid workers. The cuts in pay that are proposed are graduated above a certain level. It is also why this government reinstated the cut in the national minimum wage, which was imposed by the previous government. It is also why we legislated to reintroduce the Joint Labour Committee system after it was struck down by the High Court, because we recognise that people who are in low pay need to have a statutory framework within which their pay and conditions are protected. People who are on low incomes, it is why this government has not reduced basic rates of social welfare payment, something that was done by the previous government. It's why this government took over 300,000 people out of the universal social charge, people who are on the lowest level of pay. So when it comes to protecting people who are on low pay, this government has taken repeated action and shows exactly where it stands, even in difficult circumstances. Of course, the issue of pay only arises if you have a job, and that is why our priority is to ensure, first of all, that we protect the jobs of those who have them. That is why we have pursued policies that have not involved, as they have in other countries, compulsory redundancy of those who work in our public services. That is why we want to protect those companies who employ people in our public transport system, for example. We do not want to see Bus Éireann, for example, fail and fail financially, which will result in the loss of jobs to people who work there. It is also why we are pursuing an economic strategy which is aimed at encouraging investment in this country by companies who establish subsidiaries here, who employ Irish workers. I'm very glad to see that over the course of recent times we have been successful in that. Last week alone, for example, over 2,000 new jobs announced, over 1,000 additional jobs in the private sector over the last 12 months, a turn in the numbers of people who are at work. It's not fast enough. We want to see a lot more done in terms of additional jobs being created. It's why, for example, we have put such an emphasis on youth unemployment, people who are coming out of schools and colleges who can't get the jobs that they're qualified for. That's why we got agreement at European level on the youth guarantee, supported by €6 billion of a youth investment fund. So it's about making sure that people have jobs, that those jobs are secure and that they're not put at risk, and that the best possible pay and conditions apply to them.
Deputy Daly, supplementary question, please.
Taoiseach, of course I have nothing against you personally. The point I was trying to make was that you do appear to be considerably out of touch with the reality on the ground. Your very reference to the idea of youth unemployment being dealt with by your government is masked by the fact that over 300,000 people have been driven from our shores over the past 4 years. We have a scenario on how your out-of-touchness is revealed, really, is the fact that workers in jobs, who are glad to be in jobs, have said clearly in the public sector and in Bus Éireann that they can give no more. And you see, the issue here is that there's never only one way to deal with something. The reality is that in that time, while workers' pay and conditions have been decimated, the amount of billionaires in Ireland has almost doubled since the crisis. The amount of millionaires has gone up to 751 in the country, and the amount of people earning over €300,000, and very few of them are in the public service, has gone up to almost 10,000 people. Now, is it not the case that a party that says it stands on the side of ordinary people should see its role as tackling inequality, not accelerating it? And should you not be dealing with taxing wealth rather than decimating workers' conditions? That, in reality, was the question.
Thank you.